Hello, I'm Finola Burt from Research as a Service, and welcome to our 2022 Outlook series. In this session, we're focusing on tungsten miner and producer Almonty Industries, ASX ticker AII. And joining us is Executive Chairman Lewis Black and my colleague Andy Williams. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Finola.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Andy, I'm going to hand to you for questions. So over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Happy New Year to you, Lewis. Haven't had a chance to say that in the flesh, so to speak. 2021 was a pretty good year for you guys in terms of, hitting a lot of the high marks, getting your capital raising away and your dual listing done and construction at Sandong approved and underway. I was wondering if you'd give us a quick update on where it stands right now on what we could expect over maybe the next 3 to 6 months.
Well, construction has continued. We've completed what we call the road and river diversion, so it means now we've moved on to the planning stage of all the foundation work for the plant. All of the sewage is in, all the potable water is in. The power line, I believe, it's going to arrive first week of March, completed. And underground mine development is now about 6 months ahead of schedule. So we are right on the money. Obviously, we're having to be creative to counter a lot of the inflationary price increases we've seen on construction materials. We've borrowed some equipment from our existing mines to ship down there, which we'll then replace later. So we're doing everything we can to remain within our budget, which is very important as operators. That's really rules our lives. And I think in the next 3 to 6 months, you're going to see, firstly, you'll finally see this announcement shortly of the drawdown of the loan, because up till now we've been financing, we spent over $18.2 million at site, but the loan is now all but done. I know it's something which shareholders will be going, when? Believe me, when I write my book, some people should be very nervous because it's taken quite a journey to do a traditional project financing for a small to mid-sized company. This is something which normally has armies of personnel and lawyers doing. And to be honest, we had no idea that it was going to be this document intensive. So we're there, it's finished. We also will have further news regarding downstream for the Sandong, because ultimately in the last 6 months, the world has changed in South Korea. South Korea has lost access to urea, which is the equivalent in Australia of AdBlue. And they've also been losing coal from Indonesia. So I think there's been now a reassessment of up to 3,000 products that they are entirely dependent on one source for. And the number one is magnesium ingot, which is 100%. And number 2 is tungsten oxide at 94.7%. So this diversification of supply chain has become very relevant in South Korea. And so we should be able to share some news with the market regarding those conversations and what the next approach we're going to have as we develop the site will be.
I guess following on from, the changes and the pressures within, the construction market and within the operating environment in total, are you confident you're going to be able to stay within sort of timeline and within budget? Knowing that I think you alluding that a lot of the construction cost is sort of turnkey anyway.
Yes, at the time we didn't appear to be so smart. We ordered and locked in the pricing for all our long lead time equipment more than a year ago. And we did so without knowing exactly when we were going to require it. We knew we were going to need it, but obviously we've got to pay for it. So that was a big, heavy lift, but we did so we could lock in pricing. I'm very happy we did, because right now that same equipment would cost me 37% more, which of course is one example of the kind of savings that we can make. I think a lot of the steel bar and actual building materials, we've been sort of stockpiling at sites as we've come across them at prices that we can work with, even though we don't need them right now. So Are we going to go over budget? Well, we have a 15% contingency built within our project cost, and we feel that at the currently is more than ample to take care of any inflationary aspects that we may come across. But yes, it's going to be a fight. There's no doubt about it. Prices have definitely escalated significantly.
And you're confident that on the remaining timeline to be more or less where you needed to be at the time you needed to be there?
Yes, I think the timing and the budget are the two sacred issues in any build. And we've been planning for this budget. We saw prices were starting to escalate beginning of last year before it became more fashionable to talk about inflation. If you were on the ground, you could see that things were coming less available and were coming much more expensive. I think you first saw it in the domestic building market. People were complaining that decks they were trying to buy had suddenly gone from being at one price and they'd gone up 100%, just putting a deck in, because everyone was locked down. So of course that would be the first place that you would expect to see it. Home improvements. And so then, as we were seeing it in Portugal, we said, okay, well, listen, we have to now come up with a plan where we can start sort of stashing a lot of stuff that we're going to need so that we don't have this. And we basically came to the conclusion that if all this fell apart, we could always sell all this stuff and make a profit.
Yeah, it's been known to happen. So how are you seeing the tungsten market at the moment? I mean, you've mentioned that in terms of tightness and unavailability of magnesium ingots and tungsten oxide, but do you think this is a short-term thing, or do you think that the outlook for particularly industrial metals is going to remain robust at least through 2022 and maybe into the medium term?
Well, I think tungsten's made an interesting jump. It's still an industrial metal, but it's jumped into being a technology metal as well. So you remember, South Korea is the largest consumer of tungsten per capita in the world, and that's because of the semiconductor business and because of the battery business. So the new generation batteries that they're pumping out now is using tungsten. It's pushing out the cobalt, and they're using it in a way that can put more nickel into the battery. They can charge it faster, and it has a longer duration of it can go further distance. With semiconductors, you create what's called a tungsten hexafluoride gas, which you've got to pump into every semiconductor you produce. And South Korea consumes 40% of the global output of this gas. So we've seen the price of tungsten rise close to 45% in the last 12 months. It's continuing to strengthen. And I think that's not just demand in these not new applications, but the increasing demand for these technology applications. But we're also seeing a greater push by the consumers outside of China for further diversification. And so that's limiting the amount of choice that they have, because if they have to pay more somewhere else, they will in order to procure it. And so I think what we're seeing is we're going to see a good 3 to 5 years ahead of us in terms of price stability. And I think the price will continue to strengthen in the short term.
And just a quick last one to wrap up. The rest of the portfolio, including the molybdenum opportunity, anything we should be looking out for specifically in 2022 or even in the next 6 months?
Well, in 2022, the drilling is all but finished. Now we have to prepare all the JORC compliance documentation. It's taken a little bit of a back seat because of what we're actually now looking at the downstream. This was something which puts certainly not a wrinkle, but it essentially meant that we had to focus our attention on another element at that project, because this is what South Korea domestically needed. And when you have such a need, comes with certain gifts, I think is the best way to put it. And I think it's important that we remember that we are in a fantastic country that has been incredibly supportive to the project. And we have a great opportunity to really work now in the semiconductor and battery business, which of course, I think we all acknowledge are huge growth areas going forward.
Well, Lewis, it looks like you're going to have a very busy and fruitful year ahead. We're looking forward to catching up with you through the course of 2022 to check on Almonty Industries' progress. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Finola. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.